What do you think you're doing with that sword, Aiden? You know it's mine now.
Our sect fellows helped me up and scolded Jason.
Junior brother, the Snowblade sword was given to senior brother by Master Zephyr for protection. What do you think you're doing holding on to it like that?
A spiritual sword and its master complement each other, and having a powerful sword spirit is the greatest dream of sword cultivators. My father was the senior brother of the Greenhill sect's headmaster. He sacrificed himself for the greater good and was revered by all. The elders of various sects showed much compassion towards me, the orphan child of a hero, and my fellow disciples took great care of me.
Return the Snowblade sword to your senior brother. The sect will find another spiritual sword for you at the next selection ceremony. There's no rush.
But the sect always teaches us sword cultivators to respect the spiritual sword. Senior brother has a rare empty spiritual root, making cultivation hopeless. Wouldn't it be a waste for him to have the sword? It would be better for me.
An empty spiritual root, to put it nicely, is rare in the world, but to put it bluntly, it's useless. Everyone avoided mentioning it to spare my feelings.
Better my foot. You can either wait for the next time or take that broken sword over there.
In the corner lay a rusty, broken sword that no one had chosen, lying there all alone. Jason pouted, looking at me with dissatisfaction, holding the Snowblade sword even tighter.
Give back the sword now, Jason.
The headmaster was about to take the sword back when suddenly, the Snowblade sword emitted a brilliant cold light. The sword spirit, Snowblade, appeared in a white dress, ethereal and elegant, like a proud fairy.
I only recognize Jason as my master. If anyone tries to force me, I will seal the sword immediately.
Sealing the sword spirit was akin to self-destruction. The finest sword in the 9 provinces had its pride, preferring to shatter than to be sullied. The headmaster looked at me awkwardly.
Our Greenhill sect respects the will of the sword spirit. Since Snowblade has chosen her master, let it be given to junior brother. I, a mere useless person, can make do with a broken sword.
Snowblade raised her chin proudly and left with the triumphant Jason. Our sect fellows looked at me in disbelief.
Aiden, don't be impulsive. This is just a piece of scrap metal. It was probably picked up by your third uncle while collecting junk. The sword spirit inside is likely long gone. How can it protect you? Why don't you choose another one?
Our sect fellows also offered to give me their spiritual swords. I shook my head and declined. Having a spiritual sword of one's own is something sword cultivators yearn for day and night. How could I take someone else's?
Who knows what trick junior brother used to make that sword spirit choose him?
But I knew that Snowblade had always favored Jason. Aiden, holding the rusty broken sword, faced junior brother Jason, who had just won the favor of the esteemed spirit sword, Snowblade.
Our Greenhill sect respects the will of the sword spirit. Since Snowblade has chosen her master, let it be given to junior brother. I, a mere useless person, can make do with a broken sword.
Snowblade proudly raised her chin and left with Jason. The sect fellows looked at Aiden in disbelief.
Aiden, don't act out of spite. This is just a piece of scrap metal. The sword spirit inside is likely long gone. How can it protect you? Why don't you choose another one?
Aiden, take my spiritual sword. A broken sword won't serve you well.
No, thank you. Having a spiritual sword of one's own is something sword cultivators yearn for day and night. How could I take someone else's?
Who knows what trick junior brother used to make that sword spirit choose him?
But Aiden knew that Snowblade had always favored junior brother Jason. Aiden picked up the rusty, broken sword that junior brother Jason had discarded in their previous life. With a smile, he addressed the group.
Our Greenhill sect honors the will of the sword spirit. Since Snowblade has chosen her master, let it be given to junior brother Jason. As for me, a mere insignificant person, I can make do with a broken sword.
Snowblade raised her chin proudly and left with the triumphant junior brother Jason. The sect fellows looked at Aiden in disbelief. The headmaster, thinking Aiden was acting out of spite, tried to persuade him.
Aiden, don't be impulsive. This is just a piece of scrap metal. It was probably picked up by your third uncle while collecting junk. The sword spirit inside is likely long gone. How can it protect you? Why don't you choose another one?
The sect fellows also offered to give Aiden their spiritual swords, but he shook his head and declined.
Having a spiritual sword of one's own is something sword cultivators yearn for day and night. How could I take someone else's?
Who knows what trick Junior Brother used to make that sword spirit choose him?
But Aiden knew that Snowblade had always favored Junior Brother Jason. The Greenhill sect has been established for hundreds of years. The founder was a remarkable man who shared my name. At a young age, he founded the sect and created 100 sword techniques. Later, he perished along with a malevolent cultivator, and even his spirit sword vanished with him. He was my father's idol.
I must say, perishing with a malevolent cultivator is a fine tradition of our Greenhill sect.
I only knew that the ancestor's most powerful skill was the 9 Forms of Greenhill. I didn't know he had a rare spiritual root.
Son, don't be upset about having a rare spiritual root. Everything in this world has its own arrangement. It might be a blessing from the heavens.
The founder of your sect left 100 sword techniques for his disciples, but only the 9 Forms of Greenhill can be fully mastered by someone with a rare spiritual root. Do you still think it's useless?
My father's and Seraphina's words echoed in my mind, and I began to practice diligently.
No one knows better than I did what kind of hope that was. It turned out I could be more than useless. It turned out I could be a respectable sword cultivator.
Seraphina didn't lie to me. Under her guidance, I quickly mastered 6 forms.
How do you know our ancestor had a rare spiritual root, something even my late father and the uncles and elders didn't know?
I know everything. Now, how about a kiss as a reward?
She never minded my clumsy movements or incorrect postures. Instead, she patiently corrected me, often praising me and providing emotional support, though her way of praising had a bit of a rogue's charm. I practiced day and night. The headmaster and sect fellows were happy for me, except for Junior Brother. Recently, he often quarreled with Snowblade, complaining about the exhausting and thankless tasks he had to do, spending all his earnings on Snowblade, and not even having money for a drink.
If you don't have the life of a princess, don't act like one. Do you think my spirit stones grow on trees? I run around for you, working myself to the bone. What have you ever given me? Even Senior Brother's broken sword spirit can teach him the 9 Forms of Greenhill. And you, the so-called best sword in the 9 provinces, just lazing around useless.
It wasn't entirely Snowblade's fault. She indeed had exceptional talent in cultivation, but she was still young and unfamiliar with the Greenhill sect's sword techniques. How could she compare to Seraphina, who had lived for who knows how many years? Sometimes, even I felt that Seraphina knew more about the Greenhill sect than the headmaster. And the sword spirit and its master complement each other. Junior Brother's limited skills made Snowblade's talent useless. Seraphina and I were different. She was a broken sword spirit, and I was a useless person. Let's put it this way, even if I swung the sword randomly, it would be considered progress. The potential for improvement was immense. Seraphina was beautiful and charming, with a witty and easygoing personality. Seeing her expertise in sword techniques, sect fellows often sought her advice. Since everyone treated me well, Seraphina was willing to share more. Even the disciplinary elder was drawn to her. I couldn't join the conversation, so I went down the mountain with a few junior brothers to buy supplies. On the way back, I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my chest and fell to my knees, coughing up blood.
Aiden, what's wrong?
I looked up at the sect on the mountaintop. Something had happened to Seraphina. When I kicked open the door of the sword furnace, Seraphina's sword body was thrown into the furnace, and her spirit lay on the ground, weak and almost transparent, her face paler than usual.
Junior Brother, dressed like a peacock, had gone to your courtyard to seek Seraphina's guidance on sword techniques and had made inappropriate advances. Seraphina pushed him away, saying,
Sorry, I have an eye condition. I can't stand the sight of a peacock showing off.
As for guidance, bring your sword spirit and apologize to Aiden for what you said that day. If he forgives you, I might consider it.
Junior brother, humiliated and angry, tricked Seraphina into thinking I was injured at the sword furnace. Seraphina rushed to the furnace, not noticing junior brother stealing her sword body. By the time she realized, the sword was already in the furnace. I knew Seraphina was never as healthy as she appeared. Her sword body was broken, and her spirit was weak. The special flames of the sword furnace were fatal to her. I kicked the panicked junior brother aside and, ignoring the scorching heat, retrieved the sword, burning my hands in the process. Fortunately, the sword had just been thrown in. Seraphina looked in pain but wouldn't perish. She even had the energy to joke.
My master saved my life again. How should I repay you? How about offering myself to you?
Aiden smiled and picked up the rusty, broken sword that his junior brother Jason had discarded in the previous life.
Our Greenhill sect honors the will of the sword spirit. Since Snowblade has chosen her master, let it be given to junior brother. I, a mere insignificant person, can make do with a broken sword.
Snowblade raised her chin proudly and left with the triumphant junior brother Jason. The sect fellows looked at Aiden in disbelief.
Aiden, don't be impulsive. This is just a piece of scrap metal. It was probably picked up by your third uncle while collecting junk. The sword spirit inside is likely long gone. How can it protect you? Why don't you choose another one?
The sect fellows also offered to give Aiden their spiritual swords, but he shook his head and declined their offers.
Having a spiritual sword of one's own is something sword cultivators yearn for day and night. How could I take someone else's?
Someone grumbled under their breath.
Who knows what trick junior brother used to make that sword spirit choose him?
But Aiden knew that Snowblade had always favored junior brother Jason. Aiden smiled and picked up the rusty broken sword that junior brother Jason had discarded in a previous life.
Our Greenhill sect respects the will of the sword spirit. Since Snowblade has chosen her master, let it be given to junior brother Jason. I, a mere useless person, can make do with a broken sword.
Snowblade raised her chin proudly and left with the triumphant junior brother Jason. The sect fellows looked at Aiden in disbelief. The headmaster tried to persuade him.
Aiden, don't be impulsive. This is just a piece of scrap metal. It was probably picked up by your third uncle while collecting junk. The sword spirit inside is likely long gone. How can it protect you? Why don't you choose another one?
The sect fellows also offered their spiritual swords to Aiden, but he shook his head and declined.
Having a spiritual sword of one's own is something sword cultivators yearn for day and night. How can I take someone else's?
Someone grumbled.
Who knows what trick junior brother used to make that sword spirit choose him?
But Aiden knew that Snowblade had always favored junior brother Jason. Everyone was stunned. Jason hesitated for a moment, but his desire for Seraphina made him finally nod.
Deal.
I saw Seraphina holding her sword, with only half of its blade left, pressing it against my chest. Jason stopped, and so did the people below. Jason laughed triumphantly.
Aiden, don't think I can't see it. You like her. I want you to know that anything you like, Jason will take away. Enjoy the feeling of being ended by the one you love. Seraphina, what are you waiting for? Do it.
Seraphina ignored him and asked me instead.
Aiden, do you blame me?
I never thought that in the end, I would still meet my end at the hands of the woman I loved. No broken sword wants to rebuild its blade, and no sword spirit wants its master to be a weak and useless person. She had already given me enough. Besides, it was I who asked her to save everyone. So, no, I don't blame her. To protect my sect fellows with my life, why not?
Thank you. Please make sure he keeps his promise, or I won't let him go even in the afterlife.
Seraphina nodded.
I understand.
The sword in her hand pierced my chest without hesitation. Before the pain overwhelmed me, I heard her say,
Actually, my name is not Seraphina.
In front of me was Jason's triumphant smile and the headmaster's pale face. In my ears were the roars and curses of my sect fellows towards Seraphina. Gradually, all the images and sounds faded away, and I seemed to fall into a void. I saw a man who looked similar to me. His face was pale, blood continuously flowing from his mouth, and he held a broken sword in each hand.
Melody, I was born in Greenhill, grew up in Greenhill, and now I return to Greenhill. I have lifted the contract. You are a divine weapon. It would be a pity to perish with me. Though the blade is broken, I used my last cultivation to protect your sword spirit. You will fall into a deep sleep.
After saying this, he gently placed the broken sword with the hilt on the ground and thrust the other half into his chest.
Your blade is fused with my flesh and blood. When we meet again, you will sense the familiar aura and know that person is me. Melody, don't be afraid. Lie well and wait for me to reforge your blade.
The broken sword did not take my life. It stopped delicately in front of my heart, making a small cut. My heart's blood flowed out instantly, and the intense pain almost made me faint. The blood floated into the air, gradually forming half a blade. The broken sword on the ground seemed to be guided, rising and slowly merging with the half blade. A dazzling red light burst from the blade, accompanied by ancient chants. When the light faded, everyone saw two words appear on the hilt: Melody.
It's Melody. It's the ancestral sword Melody. Didn't Melody perish with its master hundreds of years ago? I can't believe it has reappeared today.
All the swords in everyone's hands trembled uncontrollably, then flew out and embedded themselves in the ground. The sword spirits manifested, kneeling in reverence to the red-robed woman on the high platform. Even Snowblade was no exception. The day the broken sword is reforged is the day all swords bow. Seraphina, or rather Melody, was unmoved. She stood up from her wheelchair and walked to me. Under the gaze of all, she knelt on one knee, gently kissed my blood-stained hand, and looked up with the same devotion as before.
Sword spirit Melody, willing to serve my master unto death.
Jason realized he had been tricked. Jealousy and anger drove him mad. He furiously tried to control Snowblade to attack us, but Melody, as the ancestral sword with hundreds of years of cultivation, made even the top sword of the 9 provinces cower. Melody glanced at it lightly, and it dared not move. Jason cursed it as useless, then chanted a few incantations, and Snowblade turned into a white light, merging into his body.
He can actually merge with the sword.
Melody sneered and said,
Forcing it will lead to backlash.
Huh.
Melody suddenly wrapped her arms around my neck, smiling meaningfully.
Do you know the essence of merging with the sword?
Is it having deep cultivation?
No, it's the complete mutual trust between the sword spirit and the master, truly being of one mind. It sounds simple, but is extremely difficult to achieve.
Melody winked at me.
Just now, Jason said you like me, and you didn't deny it.
My face instantly turned red. I always thought of myself as useless, that no one would like me. Even the then disabled Seraphina had her own dazzling qualities. How could she possibly like someone as worthless as me? So I always avoided my feelings until the moment of death, when I finally faced my heart. I was a bit embarrassed and angry.
So what? At that moment, life and death were at stake. Who had time to think so much? Besides, you were the one who said you would devote yourself to me.
Melody curved her lips into a smile that could enchant a nation. She cupped my face, stood on tiptoe, and planted a deep kiss on my lips.
What a coincidence, Master. I like you too.
In the end, I mastered the 9 forms of Aiden. And as the sword spirit and the master share their cultivation, Melody reforged the sword, restoring its power, and I instantly gained several centuries' worth of cultivation. With the perfect synergy between Melody and me, Jason was steadily defeated. At the last moment, Snowblade forcibly severed its bond with him. Jason suffered severe backlash, coughing up blood, and I severed his arms with a single strike, sending him tumbling off the dueling platform. Snowblade, having harmed its master, suffered even more severe backlash than Jason. Its spirit was on the verge of disintegration, but there was no regret in its eyes, only a resolute determination.
I'm sorry.
I was a bit stunned, unsure if it was apologizing for the tragic deaths of my third uncle and junior brothers, for the sword spirits it had devoured, or perhaps, for what it did to me in the previous life. Snowblade's spirit completely dissipated into the heavens and earth, and its blade shattered inch by inch. Jason stared in disbelief, muttering to himself.
I was her master. She promised to be loyal to me forever. Why did she betray me?
Jason, you should know, as a sword cultivator, that sword spirits are not lifeless objects. They have their own feelings and will. Snowblade was once the greatest sword in the 9 provinces. Though proud and pretentious, it still had a sense of righteousness. But you, for your selfish desires, forced it to consume its kind, fall into the demonic path, and use it to slaughter righteous cultivators. How could it still be in harmony with you?
I severed Jason's head to honor my third uncle and the fallen sect fellows. The remnants of the Blood Abyss sect were captured by the headmaster and other sect fellows, ridding the 9 provinces of a great scourge. I also regained the memories of my past lives. It turned out I was the reincarnation of the founder of the Greenhill sect, the true Aiden. The scenes I saw that day were my past.
Burying the remaining half of the sword blade into my heart was not only to one day reunite with Melody but also because of my unique constitution. The essence blood from my heart could nourish divine weapons, allowing the broken sword to be reforged.
That day, when I washed the sword blade for her, I accidentally cut my finger, and the familiar aura awakened her.
Since you knew all this, why didn't you tell me? Didn't you want to reforge your sword body?
I did, but I didn't want you to suffer. Extracting the essence blood from the heart is too painful.
I remembered that day when Melody plunged the sword blade into my chest. She had her back to Jason and the headmaster, and only I could see her face. She was crying. Her constantly changing mouth shape kept repeating the same sentence to me.
Aiden, I'm sorry.
If it weren't for my strong desire to save people, she would have preferred to die with me.
As long as I can be with the one I love, what does it matter if I'm disabled? As long as the one I love can live well, what does it matter if he's a useless person? But I know you don't want that.
Yes, I want my loved ones to be healthy and safe. I hope to become strong enough to protect those I care about, to shield them from fear and suffering.
The headmaster said I was the only one in centuries to master the 9 forms of Aiden. With my complex identity in the Melody Sword, I became the new headmaster. He and 5th uncle took 3rd uncle's ashes to travel the great mountains and rivers, fulfilling 3rd uncle's lifelong ambition.
The ethereal root is not bound by any world, possessing infinite possibilities.
Previously, I didn't understand the cultivation methods for rare beings like us. Now, with my memories restored, I became an all-around cultivator. The void in my soul transformed into a rainbow. Years later, I broke through the great realm and ascended.
Would you like to accompany me?
Through the heavens and the underworld, Melody the sword spirit will follow her master in life and death.